Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Those who don't know me, for them, I'm Kamala Gunwadana. I'm the Chairman Civil Engineering Sectional Committee of the IESL. It's truly a great pleasure for me to do this opening remarks and welcome you all. So first and foremost, I welcome our resource panel, Professor Amal Kumarge, Dr. Sivakumar, Engineer Dabbika Jayasundara, Engineer Dr. Samuday Nanayakara, Planner Dr. Amila Jayasinghe, and Dr. Tissali Enage. Further, I would like to welcome our President-elect, Professor Ranjit Disanayake. We know that with very busy schedules, you came here to grace this location. Thank you so much and appreciate that. And I welcome the participants who are physically participating here and those who are already had joined online, right? So welcome everybody. Actually, those who are here, we hope that you will be staying for the whole session of this webinar panel discussion under moving away from project-driven to policy-based public transport development for Sri Lanka. Actually, this is jointly organized by the Civil Engineering Sectional Committee and the Sri Lanka Society of Transport and Logistics. This session can be considered as a continuation of a previous panel discussion held in January this year, and that's also led by Engineer Dr. Tissali Enage. Since we focus to the future of public transport development in Sri Lanka, it is important to consider the benefits and challenges of moving away from project-driven to policy-based approaches. Further, project-driven approaches typically involve identifying specific transport infrastructure projects, such as building a new piece of road or a railway link, allocating borrowed financing for their constructions. While these projects can provide short-term localized benefits, they often fail to address broader policy goals or long-term system sustainability concerns. Policy-based approaches, on the other hand, prioritize the development of coherent policy frameworks that guide decision-making in the transport sector. These policies can be designed to promote sustainability, social equity, and other key goals, and they can be more effective in achieving lasting improvements to transport system. Moving away from a project-driven approach to public transport development towards a policy-based approach requires careful consideration of the practical implications for Sri Lanka, which entails taking a comprehensive view of the transport sector, including not only infrastructure, but also service provision, operations, and regulations. For example, policy-based transport planning may involve developing strategies to improve public transport service levels and to promote the use of sustainable modes of transport, such as cycling and walking. We have been trying that. It may also involve promoting intermodal integration and ensuring that transport systems are accessible to all members of the society. Overall, moving towards policy-based public transport development requires a strategic and comprehensive approach that takes into account the needs of all stakeholders and the broader policy goals of sustainable economic development. With that, few of my concerns with this transformation, we can gradually reduce car ownerships or else reduce using cars on roads. What would have been the genuine issue with railways? Just 1,450 kilometers takes care about only 60 to 7% passenger loads daily. Do we have a national transport policy right now? If so, what is it? Almost 90% of the demand still being managed by service mode. We have 200 plus kilometers of expressways, yet 21 to 23% is only being used. What about the passenger bus usage? Just even less than 10%. Our panel of experts will discuss all these and the benefits and challenges of the chosen title and share their insights and experiences in this area and provide valuable recommendations for improving the transport sector in Sri Lanka. With that note, let me introduce our moderator for the session, Engineer Dr. CESC, who will guide us through the discussion and Q&A session. Engineer Dr. CESC is a transport sector professional and a chartered engineer with over 25 years experience in the industry, has been working in many leading capacities, team leader, senior traffic engineer, senior highway design engineer, and you name it, he has done it for various major projects locally and internationally. He holds BSc in Civil Engineering, Masters in Traffic and Highways, PhD in Transport Demand Estimations from University of Moratuwa. He is a fellow member and an international professional engineer of IESL and has held several positions in IESL Council and subcommittee since 2009. He is a member of the Civil Engineer Sectional Committee too. He is a visiting lecturer at University of Moratuwa and already he has published about 40 research papers. He is one of the founder member and the current president of Sri Lanka Society of Transport and Logistics. He is the founder chairman of Master Haley's Group and current CEO of Master Haley's Engineering Consultants Limited. Without further ado, let's begin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Kamala Gunawardana, for giving us a very good introduction today regarding this our specific program. After sometimes we had one program in February this year. This is we are thinking that some extension of that as well. So without talking much, let me make a small awareness of what is SLSTL for those who are not aware of SLSTL as at now. Sri Lanka Society of Transport and Logistics Transport and Logistics Studies is a domestic society of that is a 19th domestic society of the East Asia Society for Transport Studies. That is even some of the countries like India is not there, but Sri Lanka is taken as very specific society. And in this society, actually, the members are very specific. Actually, they have to have at least the minimum of postgraduate level of qualification to join there. So we are having more than 45 PhD members there all over the country, major from many universities and from the industry as well. So actually, I'm representing both. So as a current president of Transport and Logistics Society, Sri Lanka Society for Transport and Logistics, I am very much honored to be the moderator for this presentation today. So without taking much time, let me introduce the keynote speaker today. Professor Amal Kumargi is a transport sector professional with 40 years experience in academia, government and international consultancy. and consultancy for World Bank and ADB in both Sri Lanka and overseas. He has served as an advisor to the government of Sri Lanka as well as Maldives. And he has served 3 times as the chairman of National Transport Commission, we call NTC, and on several other statutory boards for a period of 20 years. He holds a civil engineering degree from the University of Moratuwa and a PhD in transport planning and engineering from the University of Calgary. He's a chartered engineer, fellow, and a former chairman of Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. He's a founder president of Sri Lanka Society of Transport Logistics, and that is SLSTL, and he's currently a senior professor at the University of Moratuwa. So I would like to cordially invite Professor Amal Kumar Gay to start with the presentation today. Thank you very much.
Good evening to everybody, and I'm privileged to be able to deliver this leading or the opening presentation. And I would like to thank the IESL, the president-elect who is here, and as well as the president who was unable to be here, and the chairperson of the Civil Engineering Section Committee, as well as Dr. Tissa Lianage, the president of SLSTL, for organizing this event, which we feel is not just another seminar. We would very much like this to be a landmark occasion where we begin to move away from project-driven scenarios to policy-based planning and projects. This is one of the problems that Sri Lanka has faced over the years, and which has brought us to this current state of despair, that we have not done not just transport, but many aspects of society without a proper policy. And I am also hopeful that today we will be able to see what engineers can play, the renewed role that engineers must play in this process. So the objectives of my presentation, which I would like to finish in about 25 minutes, 30 the most, is first to see, is there a consensus that we can develop for improving public transport? This is a topic that many of us here have been talking about for 20 years, maybe, some for more. But somehow, even though people are convinced that public transport is the way forward, we forget and we want expressways and roads and flyovers and things like that. So can we reach a consensus, particularly as the engineering community, that this is the way forward? Now, there are also some projects that people talk about, projects that have caught the public imagination. And even after the economic crisis, people ask, when are those projects starting again? People say, if only we had that project that was canceled, wouldn't all our problems be over? So are these projects the most needed? So is there a current transport plan and policy, as Engineer Kamala Gunawardana asked, that we can implement now, particularly under this existing scenario where investments are going to be constrained? And if there is, what is the role that the engineering community plays? Are we ready to meet this new challenge? Or do we think that only highway engineers and building roads is the only contribution of engineers to solving traffic problems, and other things are left for other people and other disciplines? Transport has come a long way from the time when road building and before that railway building was seen as the major engineering contributions. Today it is multidisciplinary, as you will see from even our panel, that we need to work together to develop this. So I hope that engineers will take a fresh look at this. I thought I will first present my conclusions in summary. So I want to recommend 8 immediate steps. The first is that there is a plan, a combination of plans for Western Province that are ready for implementation. It's not that we don't have a plan. It's not that we have to spend money and time to develop plans. We have a plan, and I will tell you what the plan is and why. Even though that plan is 7-8 years old, it is still relevant and ready for implementation. Many countries have a magic formula of changing transport problems, and that is getting pricing right. Sri Lanka's transport pricing is done by different people for different purposes. There is no unified way of approaching pricing. Fuel is priced independently, vehicle import separately, bus fares separately, train fares separately, everything separate. And therefore, this has to change, particularly now with the government about to allow import of vehicles. How do we approach this? We have a window, a golden window to change the pricing policy for the future. Thirdly, we need to reschedule the LRT, the much talked about LRT, for private investment. We need to try and see whether JICA is willing to divert that funding, which we get at very concessional terms, to railway electrification and bus infrastructure and service development. Then we need to change the way in which we operate buses. Many countries operate buses very successfully. Why have we lost that success? It's because we have a bad regulatory model. Many countries over the years have changed the regulatory model and made buses the most attractive mode. Sixth, we need to now move into artificial intelligence in managing traffic. That is the way of the future. And we need to bring in the engineers who can, do these things into transportation and traffic management. And this is something the private sector can do. We need to be able to develop town centers, not only Colombo, but across the country, on accepted norms of land use and transport integrated development. Architect Amila Jayasinghe is on our panel, and he's somebody who's working in that area. And finally, engineers and related professionals must be realigned and ready to work in this new space, rather than always looking what kind of infrastructure, what kind of expressways and flyovers can we build. That era is gone. And we have to now realign to this new era of data-led, digitalized, multi-sector transportation development. So if you agree with me on all of these, I will not mind if you walk out the door. But if you feel that you find it difficult to convince other people of these 8, please stay. Hopefully you will be convinced enough to convince other people. This is promoting public transport is one of the most difficult things, because everybody desires, or they have been told, that own a car, drive a car is the pinnacle of personal and national success. Okay, so what are these plans we have? There are 3 plans that were done for the Western Province. 2014, the JICA Finance Comtrans Transport Plan, done by a team of international and local experts. Then that plan was reviewed by the University of Moratuwa at the request of the Ministry of Transport in 2015. And then there came the megapolis plan, the megapolis transport plan, which put both of those aside and was approved for implementation in 2016. So we have plans. We have 3 plans, not 1 plan. We could pick. Now, let me take you through some of these plans. So the JICA Comtrans plan made several recommendations. They gave a lot of project proposals for the next, for about 25 years. And then they chose different corridors, the 7 major corridors serving Colombo. And you can see that they made recommendations for each of them. So the railway was recommended for 3 corridors. And you can see that actually BRT and buses, bus priority was recommended for other than 2 corridors for everything, in addition to the rail. Then they put in monorail on the Mala Bay and high-level corridors. And I will tell you later why that happened and why they didn't recommend anything for those 2 corridors. Now, because of certain shortcomings in this, the University of Moratuwa and Dr. Sivakumar and I were both involved in that process of readying this plan for investment. So we were tasked by the end of 2014. And when we presented it, actually a new government was in place. And therefore, we presented it and that government was willing to go with that. The JICA plan slightly modified by us. And you can see that we basically stuck to the same recommendations. You can see that bus priority and BRT are there on most of the corridors. Railway, in fact, was recommended for all the corridors, in fact, new corridors in the long term, because we ran models and found that all of these were necessary in the long term. And we also gave priority for each of them, particularly the ones that could be done in the short term, because even then we had a huge deficit in transportation planning. And then we found that Mala Bay corridor, actually the railway and the bus priority were not really considered adequately. In fact, railway was not considered at all in that corridor. And that is one of the things that the Transport Ministry wanted us to look at. And when we put those in and say, we saw the monorail becoming only the 3rd priority, not the first and only priority. So that's the way you can make projects the number 1 project by not considering other projects. You get 1 person to run the race, he is the last, the first and everything, right? So then we actually made that 3. So this actually, by the end of 2015, some of these projects were picked up for funding. 1 BRT project, as well as the extension of the new railway line on the Mala Bay were picked up, feasibility studies were done, and they were ready for financing. One of the key aspects of both these plans was how development was planned for the Western province. So Colombo is a monocentric city, which attracts, a lot of traffic, people coming in because that is the dominant city. So at that time, and even today, the view was that we need to develop peripheral cities, go for polycentric cities, and then have good transport systems between these city centers, rather than getting everybody on a daily basis, morning and evening, to the center. That congests the center, and that is a rather outdated form of urban development. Today, it's more efficient to have smaller cities, compact cities, and people like that rather than high-density cities. So this is the plan that was there, where we reduce the people coming into the center. However, the megapolis plan completely reversed this process by planning for heavy transport infrastructure to come into the city and assuming that there will be more and more city jobs in the city, and in fact, they estimated 2 to 4 times the number of passengers coming now to come into the city, making it even more congested. And in how they did this was they assumed that the population growth in the Western province, which was less than 1%, 0.77% historically, would suddenly increase to 2.2%, threefold increase. Economic growth rate, which was averaging about 4, would go to 7.7%. So any transport model, when you put all these assumptions, you can get 3-4 times people on the transport system. And that is what they did. So arising from what did they, and so this you can see the railway. So this is the current railway growth, and this is the KV line at the bottom. And by 2025, megapolis assume that it will grow like this exponentially, even surpassing the traffic on the entire system, present traffic on the entire system. So the net result of this was the megapolis transport plan saying that we need heavy transport infrastructure immediately. And they said that buses are not going to provide this, BRT is not going to provide this, and that was rejected outright. So as you can see, even though the JICA plan, the Morato University plan, immediately said develop the bus sector, which was cheap, relatively cheap, could have been done very quickly, that was basically put to the medium to long term. Otherwise rejected. The BRT was rejected outright. Then monorail, which we had said only one immediate line within the city, and the others only 17 kilometers, because it's expensive, 75 kilometers to be. And so that's how rapid transit, originally monorail, later became LRT, got priority. 75 kilometers. Railway electrification remained the same. So basically what the monorail, the megapolis did was the short-term proposals to bring in bus was made long-term. The long-term proposal to bring in rapid transit as and when necessary was made immediate. So that entire plan was turned upside down. Okay, so this is what we have. So interestingly, if I have analyzed what the megapolis plan promised to deliver in 2016, for which they got cabinet approval. So if I take out the projects that were already progressing, this is a list of the projects that they said would be completed, implemented, studied by the different years. So you can see 2017, a whole heap, 2018, the progress even to date was none. And the same government that approved this was in office till 2019. So I have looked at the projects that they said would be finished by 2019. I have not taken projects that were scheduled to be finished after that, because the government changed and people can say, no, because of that, the project stopped. So during this time, you can see none of these projects were actually completed. And there's a list, 2018, 2019, railway electrification. None of those actually have got implemented. So you can reach your own conclusion as to whether this ambitious plan built on, assumptions of high growth has materialized, even today, leave alone 2019. And even the demand we know has not materialized for various reasons. So what we have now is to choose which plan that we can follow. Now, I would say that the JICA plan and the UOM plan are still valid, even though they were produced almost 7-8 years ago. Why? During this period, our economic growth has averaged out to 0. It will remain like that for a couple more years. Our population has not increased in Western province. If at all, it has decreased with the migration, internal and overseas. Our status quo has not changed, and therefore the plan is valid by and large. Maybe some tweaks are necessary. So these plans are available for implementation. Megapolis plan, in my opinion, is out. So Engineer Gunawardhan asked about policy. Do we have a policy? So 2020, a draft National Land Transport Policy was developed, was not approved, still not approved by Cabinet. It had gone up and down several times. 2018, a Sustainable Sri Lanka Vision was developed. It was by the President's Office. It is publicly available, but not approved. The 2021 is not publicly available. The only currently available policy is dated to 2009, which I happened to be the chair of that committee. And I would still say that the 2009 policy is still good for implementation. And I know that the 2020 draft policy is also very much aligned to it. It brings in a lot more technology and environmental concerns, which have developed since then. But policy-wise, on paper, we have what it takes to invest. However, unfortunately, the 2009 policy, I reviewed the proposals in that, only 3% of those proposals were fully implemented. 86% were not implemented at all. So we are not a policy-driven community. May I interrupt? I see a lot of people outside the door. Are they no? It's becoming no, okay. Right. So this is something we have to look at. We can have policies, but if we do not have the mechanism to implement this, then we have a problem. So hopefully we will have that in place. Now, the 2009 policy was based on the prediction of vehicle ownership, as was mentioned earlier. So if I may explain this to you, over the years, the passenger kilometers traveled in Sri Lanka has grown, as you can see. In 1977, 78% of people were traveling by bus, which is in the blue line. The railway carried about 10%. And so this is the time when motorization began, as you know. And then by 2013, our estimates were that the motor vehicle ownership would increase and match bus transport at 48%. Railway would still be struggling. And then we noted globally that this is the time when per capita incomes reach $3,000. And globally, we know that once you reach that, motorization takes an exponential growth. And we had to be ready for that. So this was first presented by me in 2009. Ready in the country to meet that challenge. So our estimates then were something like this, that it would grow exponentially over a period of 20 years, it would go to 300%. And then bus transport would reduce, railway might hold its ground. Now, is this the valid model for Sri Lanka? Because this is what we have proceeded on, making space and investing for this high rate of growth. And most of our investment has gone there. The current budget for 2023, which is not fully financed, but at least what is approved by Parliament, 87.5% of the 330 odd billion rupees is for roads. I cannot think of any other country that will invest so much into highways. Now, even in spite of all of that, where are we now? Now, highway building has been getting a lot of money. I will show in a little while. Public transport has not. And if you really look at the economic crisis now, the poor transport policy is responsible. 8% of the total import bill is for road vehicles. 8%. Then 3 to 4% is to pay back loans for road construction. And even at $50 a barrel, it went up to $120 last year. Now it's about $80. We were spending 10%. And in last year, this was about 23%. And all of that, 1/3 of our import bill was for transport. 1/3, more than we spend for food, for medicine, for milk, and all what we call essentials. How can a country economically sustain when you have such a poorly formulated policy? So this is one of the reasons why we had an economic crash. There are many other reasons. But have we learned anything? Are we still going to go on this same road? We don't produce a drop of oil. Now we are saying, okay, we will go for electric vehicles. Okay. But we still have an electricity shortage, which we need to address first. 60–70% of the fuel that we get is for transport. So the issues facing public transport is that we have low public transport investment. So you can see the level of investment for roads over the years, and after 2005, how it increased and how the railway actually took a hit. And other than a couple of years, there was some spikes in investment. Bus, on the other side, never got anything ever. So we need to look at these investment portfolios. Can we continue to do like this? Should we, what about regulation for higher quality? Today, bus regulation, railway regulation is to keep the status quo, keep the suppliers happy, not to change it for the benefit of the consumer and the higher service. We are still struggling to bring basic digital data into the system when other countries are fully digitally run. I want to quickly tell you why public transport is important. I'm sure some of you have seen this. So this is per capita income in US dollars. And this is the vehicle ownership as a percentage of population. So let's look at low density countries, such as the US, Iceland, Australia, Canada, New Zealand. So out of 230 countries, USA is ranked 177. So their vehicle ownership rate was about 60% in 1960. And when they reached $30,000 in 1980, it was about 75%. Now it is 91%. So that country, as have all the other countries, have become high income countries in spite of high ownership of vehicles. Why? Because in low density countries, that is the appropriate strategy. Let's take Singapore and Hong Kong, which have also exceeded those limits. And in the case of Singapore, you can see in 1980, they had less than 10. And in 2005, they reached 20,000, 30,000 and 12, and still they have only 15 vehicles per 100 people. So here are two starkly contrasting countries which adopted appropriate policies to reach high income. And there are many countries in between the medium density. For example, Japan, that is the path, Korea, that is the path. And Sri Lanka is also one of these countries. We are the 38th most densely populated country in the world. So where are we now? We have, according to somebody, 7.3 QR codes are now in operation, 7.3 million. For a population of 20 million, that is 30%. We are at $4,000 per capita income. I have said 28%, but it's more like 30%. So we are on an unsustainable curve. we have to pull back. We cannot go, and I do not know a better way to communicate this to people who have to make the decision. Maybe you can. So based on that, the different provinces, I have just shown what is the percentage of public transport. Not necessarily ownership, but what percentage of public. So you can own a vehicle. Many European countries have high ownership, but they don't always use the car for their travel. That is what we should go for. So 65% of travel in Western province should be on public transport. So going into the transport proposals, with revised timelines, the proposal is there. Immediately the bus priority, the bus lanes, the BRT, which can be done in 3-4 years at most. And in that period, get the electrification ready by 2030. And then beyond that, we can see whether we need rapid transit, which is the most expensive per kilometer. Now, I want to quickly go into the current projects. Everybody talks about beginning with the LRT, right? Now, you may not know that the LRT project, earlier as a monorail project for Malabar, began as an unsolicited proposal. And the government made a decision, and it was mentioned in Parliament even before the JICA plan was completed. And after that, before cabinet approval was given for this project, there were meetings between the government of Japan and Sri Lanka to finance the project. And then the National Planning Department, when it got the feasibility study, gave recommendations, observations that the estimates were too high. In spite of that, cabinet approved it unconditionally. So, but the other issue is that this is the ridership that was given, and we have done a recent study on the corridor. And so basically you have about 60% of the ridership than what was estimated on the corridor. Then also it was estimated that I think, a large percentage would move to LRT, much more than anything observed anywhere else in the world. That's what the NPD said. And that is true. So if we actually operated this, if that went ahead, this may have most likely joined the other projects of the expressways and flyovers in Hambantota, the port, the airport, and so on. What I call stopping places for the white elephant safari. So should have been the Colombo's version. Let's also look at the cost. In the JICA study, monorail was costed at $57 million per kilometer. Of course, it was changed to LRT, saying it will be less costly, at $50 million a kilometer. When the feasibility study was done, it became $98 million, but the same people, same consultant. And when the loan agreement was signed, it has now become $141.5 million per kilometer. I cannot find an LRT in Japan that carries this number of passengers. I cannot find an LRT anywhere in the world built at this cost. However, the feasibility study says it's going to be economically viable, financially viable. So based on that, I think the best is if the private sector wants to do it as per these studies, let them do it. Why should we say no? Somebody is willing to come and invest at this cost? Certainly. There are more important things for government finance. The railway electrification project, as I said, now this is a project that we might be able to convince Japan to give us, to divert that loan for this. And I think, Dr. Siambalapiti, we should be able to do most of this with the $2,222 million, most of it, if not all of it. And how many? The Malabar line will carry only 1% of the total traffic of Sri Lanka. 1%. If you develop all of Western Province Railway, that might very well carry about 7-8%. The third one is developing buses. So this proposal has been there since 2018 cabinet approval, but it was first taken by the MCC, then MCC got kicked out. Government said, we will fund it, but well, nothing has happened. This is waiting, fully developed, NPD approved, to modernize the bus system, to bring it on par with anywhere else in the world. And this is something we can get with 80% of the investment from the private sector. And we need only $250 million to do all the buses in Western Province. Now that is about 12%, or that's about the cost of 2 kilometers of the LRT. For 2 kilometers of the LRT, we can do the entire bus system. For half, the 1/3, we can do the entire bus fleet in Sri Lanka. Okay, so bringing this to standard. So I come to my first slide again. We have a plan that is ready for action. We need to begin with changing transport pricing, investments. We need to reschedule LRT for private investment, negotiate with JICA to divert that funding to railway electrification and bus infrastructure development, urgently change bus regulation to bring in private sector investment and focus it on improving higher quality of bus services. Then I didn't speak much about it. I think my other colleagues will bring in private investment to manage traffic using artificial intelligence. It's happening, can be done. Develop urban transport plans for cities. And my final thing, hopefully, that we as an engineering community will think of transport development not as just merely building roads and not the work of highway engineers, road engineers alone. They all have a part to play, but we need electronics engineers as we move forward, electrical engineers, electric vehicles are coming. We need computer science engineers. We need mechanical production engineers. And we also need different types of civil engineers to build different infrastructure. For example, in Sri Lanka, there isn't a single company I'm aware of that is competent to build railway lines. Why? I remember like that long time ago, the road sector was like that. So we need to develop these companies. So for engineering, there are actually lots of opportunities, but we need to get out of this mindset that transport is only road building and look at all the opportunities that are there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Very attractive and very informative presentation today. I think we have a lot of engineers here and a lot of decision makers and at top level experts. So as you mentioned that we can request, this is not just a presentation, but we have to take this forward with this today's program and make it more effective and trying to implement what we have not achieved so far over the years, decades, as Professor mentioned. When you talk about this, lot of information and a lot of things we have understood from this presentation is that we are talking and getting a lot of programs and going to the government and pressing this one and telling what is exactly to be done. But most of the time, these things are not implemented properly. Whereas some of the projects in some of the projects are going on. As he mentioned, that highway sector project investment is something like 283 billion. Even in last year, we saw that in the budget allocations. So with that, we are continuing today with this as two more sessions, that is with our eminent panel members. We have blended of different subject areas, experts from public transport and ICT, railways, and basically in urban planning and land use. So with that note, I would like to announce that these two sessions, there will be two sessions. First sessions, actually, we are going to focus with the panel members to understand more with what Professor has presented, and to get in different ideas and different analysis from the other experts as a first round. That is not open to the questions from the audience here. But second round, we are giving you the opportunity to talk about and ask questions at the second round. So each cases we will take about half an hour and half an hour like that. So that's a program today. So with that note, I would like to request all the panel members and our keynote speaker to be present and comfortably seated here to give your an introduction here. Thank you very much. Today, we have 5 panelists here, including our keynote speaker, Professor Amal Kumaragi. I have given a good introduction on our keynote speaker at the beginning. Now, to introduce our panel members, other panel members there. We have Dr. Sivakumar, T. Sivakumar. Dr. Sivakumar is a senior lecturer and former head of the Department of Transport and Logistic Management, Faculty of Engineering of University of Moratuwa. He holds BSc Honors in Civil Engineering from the University of Peradeniya and a master degree in, that is MEng in Transport Engineering from the Asian Institute of Technology, AIT, Thailand. And he holds a Doctor of Engineering degree in Transport Engineering from Yokohama University, Japan. And he is the founder secretary of the and the immediate past president of SLSTL, Sri Lanka Society for Transport and Logistics. His research interests are public transportation, transport modeling, optimization, activity, mobility, and road safety. He has been involved with several consultancy projects for the Road Development Authority, Ministry of Transport, JICA, World Bank, and other funding agencies. So we will have a good interactive session with him in the area of basically public transportation. Engineer Dhammika Jayasundara, our next panelist from there. And Engineer Dhammika Jayasundara graduated from University of Moratuwa in 1997, joining Sri Lanka Railway in year 2000 as a signal engineer after 2 years in the private sector. He was promoted to the chief engineer of the Sri Lanka Railways and Signal Sub-Department in 2014. Also, he was appointed the railway as a railway general manager in 2021, few years back, and also appointed as a Director General Technical at the Ministry of Transport and Highways in 2022, and currently continuing here. He has obtained Masters of Public Administration from University of Sri Javatripura and is a fellow member of IESL. We have eminent engineer Dhammika Jayasundara here. He will be talking about the railways and related to this railway transportation. And our next speaker and the panel member, Engineer Dr. Samudaya Nanayakara, is not very much new to IESL. I remember that he has been with me at the council in 2014 and 15 as well. Engineer Samudaya Nanayakara completed his PhD in engineering related to blockchain technology from Western Sydney University, Australia. In addition, he gained an MSc in computer science and BSc engineering honors degree from the University of Moratuwa. Dr. Samudaya has contributed to over 30 large ICT projects and voluntarily contributed to several global open source software projects as well. He obtained his chartered engineer status for computer science in 2012, and he held the ICT committee chairman position at the Institute of Engineers Sri Lanka in 2015 and 16 sessions. Recognizing his contribution to the engineering profession and the research and academia, Engineer Samudaya Nanakara was bestowed with several national and international awards, including National Engineering Excellence Award in 2013. Currently, he's serving as a senior lecturer at the Department of Transport Management and Logistic Engineering. That is the 23rd engineering course in Sri Lanka, University of Moratuwa. And the fourth panel member, planner Dr. Amila Jayasinghe. Dr. Amila Jayasinghe is a senior lecturer at the Department of Town and Country Planning, University of Moratuwa. He has obtained BSc honors degree in Town and Country Planning from University of Moratuwa, Masters in Infrastructure Planning from CESC University, India. His master's dissertation was a study on BRTs and bus systems in Ahmedabad, India. So we have to be very proud of him to be touched in this transport sector very much. And his doctoral thesis was on travel demand simulation, and his research interests are urban infrastructure and transport planning, urban and regional planning, spatial analysis and simulation, and urban informatics as well. Dr. Amila is one of the Vice President of Sri Lanka Society of Transport and Logistics, and he is an experienced town planner who is a corporate member of the Institute of Town Planners in Sri Lanka, IESL. So thank you very much for joining with us today to have a very good interactive sessions. So as a first session, I will like to start the session. So I think I'm comfortable to be with them. So yeah, so I'll start with I'll start with our keynote speaker today, Professor Amal Kumargi. He has done a very good and very informative presentation, as I mentioned. Professor, actually, now this transportation in Sri Lanka, everybody knows that it's a big concern for everybody. Basically, those who are captive users in public transport. Public transport is a major issue in Sri Lanka as at now. So you have tried actually so many efforts and some kind of policy-based as well as a project-based approach to support this public transport sector in Sri Lanka. I remember since say 2-3 decades. So some of the bus transport system, actually your recommendation in this one is to go for this the bus transport system, whereas we have not seen any improvement as per your figures as well. Because in 1970s, it was like 70% of the share in the transport is through buses. There's a golden era of, public transport in bus transport system in Sri Lanka. So it has now become to like 48%, and nowadays it is like 28% as the slides there. So, so what is happening in Sri Lanka? Is it possible to put forward that your argument as the bus transport is the best supporting, transport infrastructure in Sri Lanka and urban areas?
Thank you for the question. I won't say that bus transport is the best. We need to have integrated transport solutions that use all modes of transport, including private transport. As I showed there are certain sections or certain districts, provinces where the majority will have to be private vehicles, because once people reach that ownership level, it will be more costly to serve those areas with public transport. In fact, somebody riding a motorcycle, three-wheeler will be the cost-effective approach. But in densely populated areas, such as Western Province, our cities, we need to have appropriate modes of transport, more to public transport. Now, when along the major corridors, there's no doubt that suburban railway has adequate capacity and will have even more capacity with electrification and modernization to deal with it. However, Sri Lanka being and Colombo being a very small geographic area, our trip lengths are fairly short. In Western Province, the average trip length is less than 10 kilometers. So when trip lengths are shorter, the probability of people using the railway goes down, okay, because of access. So then you need to strike this balance between bus and rail and integrate in them. So you need to have both these. So you have to qualitatively develop both. Now, why I said bus is a priority is in terms of investment in the short term. In the short term, buses are much easier to turn around. Many countries have shown that. Indian cities are doing that now than railway. There is a greater opportunity for private investment in those areas than in railway, which needs large investments where government has to stand as guarantor or borrow. Why haven't we been able to do that? Sri Lanka is not the only country that has neglected this essential transport policy and gone ahead. And even India now. So India actually had lower per capita income than us have. And still, from 2010 onwards, under the Sri Jawaharlal Nehru Urban Development Project, they are investing heavily into urban public transport infrastructure and service development, which we still have not followed. So I think there comes a point when each country needs to realize we have not had that political leadership, or probably not enough adequate professional leadership to make that happen. But now that we have crashed, and one of the reasons is an unsustainable transport policy, I think we have got a second chance to get up with the right solution.
Yeah, Professor, what is the social support we can get for this one? Actually, we as engineers, we can understand, with this mathematical analysis of, this BRT is better and the bus lanes are better and the high occupancy vehicle and all kind of things. So far, why we have not been successful with park and ride system and the bus lanes and things? I don't know whether with the people, the society is telling that
it depends on whom you ask. If you ask car owners, they will say bus lanes were not successful. But if you ask bus passengers, they will say they were successful. So the problem is with us. We want to drive cars, and then we don't want to see the sustainable transport solution that helps the majority of the people and the country as a whole. We are the problem. In fact, instead of being the solution, we professionals are the problem. If we realize that, and if we show that, now the bus lane was basically successful. Every survey, every public opinion showed. It was some of the engineers, even some of the academics from my own institution, that took to the street saying, or to the papers or social media saying, what is this old-fashioned things? We need to have LRT and things like that. So it is we who are responsible for creating bad image and leading people, policymakers even, to the wrong thing. So we have to change ourselves.
And the media campaigns, we need to make some, to make the people aware. Thank you very much, Professor. I would like to move to the next question, regarding the public transport. Our expert in bus transport and public transport, Dr. Sivakumar. Actually, we have been talking that about our, Sri Lanka as a developing country. That has been heard from last 50, 60 years. It is a developing country. Still, we are, at the present trend, it's a different matter, different economics, but we were, even up to the 2010 and 15, we were noted as, developed, developing country. So what is the impact of this transport, bus transport or the public transport contribution to this economic consideration? Like why it is not bringing us a big contribution for economy? Because it is, as we learn from the transport sector, transport studies, we know that transport is some kind of a service and it's a derived demand for all the other economic activities. So it's essential because all the other sectors are dependent on this transport supply. So what has happened is why this big contribution is not coming from the bus transport and the public transport system. Actually, you can use your slides as well.
Thank you for that question. I think, so we all understood based on the vehicle occupancy, the public transport as a one extreme, rail and bus and other, and also any staff transports and any other van pool or any other ride sharings are high occupancy sites. So we need to use our resources in the best way what we can do. So in Professor Kumarage's presentations also, most of the corridors was recommended for bus rapid transit. So first, very quickly, what I would like to say, bus rapid transit is very attractive, like you're seeing in the screen. It's not just a bus. So I would like to say this to the hearing engineers and hearing community. This is something completely different to bus. So though the vehicle may be bus or maybe modernized bus, but then there are a whole lot of integration is there. So looking at the pictures, I will just quickly go into the policy or a concept says whatever obstacles the movement of bus, you remove. So it can be a private vehicle or it can be any other mode of transport. If anything obstructs the bus, you remove it. So that's the concept came into bus priority lane and then bus priority measures. And then finally, extreme system is bus rapid transit. So you give a way for exclusive way or exclusive lane for buses, and then you modernize the bus and also remove these all staircase buses so that all pregnant women and kids and even patient can onboard in our public transport. So low flow buses and then technologically supported. So ticketing is electronically ticketing and the capacity is increasing by articulated buses and bi-articulated buses, as you can see some of the figures here. And also you can see high quality buses and the stations are designed in such a way. And then easy transfer, you can from one bus to another. So there are a whole lot of integration is behind this BRT. So easily some PPP programs or some private investors locally, not necessarily foreign, somebody can and think of investing even in bus. It's attractive enough. And then somebody may ask, Dr. Tissa asked why it is for developing countries and why it is important in developing countries. So there are a lot more reason for that. One is, as Professor Kumarage said, people have seen and experienced, and the existing bus is not there to provide any more luxury services. So people have their mindset already. So we need to overcome that. So that's a challenge we have. So conventional bus, we need to move from conventional first for sure. But then on the other hand, the rail-based systems are high speed and high capacity. So always rail is superior to buses, of course. But then the connectivity is some issue, as Professor Kumarak again mentioned. So this bus is still running on the tire wheel and the steering. So it has a flexibility. You can take the bus anywhere you have the roads. So that flexibility is used, and increasing the bus capacity by modifying the buses articulated and bi-articulated. So increase the capacity, and then you improve the, remove all the obstacles and enhance the speed. So you're trying to improve the bus with the whatever the positive on the existing bus and whatever the positives on the railways, you combine together and put it at a new system is called BRT. And then also you can say, if somebody wanted to design and implement a BRT, it's takes 1 to 2 years average. Jagat has done it in 1 year, but then they were very quick and they had some issue. But generally within 2 years time, it's adequate enough to plan, implement the whole BRT system. We may not necessary to go in one go, but then it's possible. Then if you take any BRT, sorry, LRTO, MRTO, any other systems, then average lifespan, or sorry, the construction span, design and construction is take a long time. And in developing countries, most of the time is fail because the government span is only 6 years in our region. So another campaign come and then there is no continuity. So there is no long-term decision can be made for a mega projects like that. So we have an advantage. And some we have this concept, or somebody wrongly messaged into us, bus cannot take capacity enough. But then I'm just presenting this one. We have so far taken, when the demand is growing, we have gone into the direction where we given the priority for the roads, and given the more cars, more infrastructure. This is the policy that we have gone so far. Now we need to move from here, because you see, for a one lane, if you give one lane for a vehicle or a mode of transport, the regular bus can go up to 9,000. So still our buses are carrying that. And then some routes we have more than this. So that's why we need to go into a regular bus to the other. And most interestingly, if you give a lane for cycle, it carries a lot. If you give an exclusive lane for a cycle, and if you give exclusive mall or a lane for a pedestrian, you see a large number of people can move in that lane. But then the distance matter. So anyway, for a short distance is possible. Then comes to the BRT for a single lane. On average, it carries 20,000 passengers per hour. And this is where we need to. So right now our demand is around 10,000 per corridor during the peak direction. So if we can go for a 20,000 capacity, that's mean if you implement a single lane BRT, you can double your demand, whether you reach or not. Like right now you have a half a demand, and you may expect some of the shifting from private vehicles. Still our BRT can survive for just a few more years to fill this capacity. Then LRT comes to 22. If you compare the cost of BRT, it's ranging from 1 million to 10 million on average. If you take several developing countries' cases goes too high, but then generally it is 1 to 5 millions per kilometer. On the other hand, the LRT goes on 10 times higher than the BRT. And if you go MRT, it is 20 times higher than the BRT. So this is where we need to take a decision what we want. So you see the capacity is more or less same, but the cost is almost 10 times in general. But the Sri Lankan case is much, much higher than what I'm telling here. And then BRT double line, like Curitiba and Transmilenio and so some other BRT system, it's a double line. You can see the capacity of transit line is almost 43,000. And then goes to the heavy rail and the suburban and other mass rabbits. Yes, of course, the capacity is high, but we have the demand? When we will have the demand is the matter. This has time. These are some of the corridors and the corridors in Colombo, and some of the corridors which we can easily find out for BRT feasibility. So these are some of the demand numbers. We can go for bus improvement projects. And then this is some of the what is the current passenger hour per direction, and what are the cost of implementing different modes of transport. You can see here the underground or any kinds of metro lines, it goes about 50 million. And then for any type of LRT, it's starting from 20 million to 40 million. And then BRT, you can see somewhere around maximum is of 15 million. So on average, we have seen in developing countries, it's much less than 10 million. And in terms of the carrying capacity, you can see a large range of BRTs are available around the world. So this is the message what we have to take. And this is, if you don't want to jump to, because sometimes you need to take some stage-wise process. So we have implemented, we tried bus priority lane first. And then some of the corridors has been piloted, and we have gone into the customer service. There was a video, but anyway, I don't think it can be played from here. So we have Rajagiriya was experimented, and then Gold Road was experimented. In total, we have around 40 kilometers or 45 kilometers of bus priority lane was trialed here in Colombo. And where the right of way is not enough, we have gone to bus priority measures. That's mean not exclusive lane, but we have shared the lane, and then we have tried BPL for another 55. So around 100 kilometers, we have tried bus priority measures in Colombo already, but nobody is ready to take the ownership and continue it. These are some corridors we have tried. The Moratua revised study has given this one, and you can see the timelines. Still, we couldn't do, but these are ready to implement as a BRT network.
Yeah, economics. I think economics are very clear. But understanding is that what we have selected, it is Sri Lanka actually. We should not try for, what is to become another country. So much of people in Sri Lanka's way of thinking is that we have to be, like Singapore, like other developed countries. But Sri Lanka is different. We have to adapt to the system and the supply and demand system, what is happening as equilibrium. So very clear that, the economics says, like what mode of transport we have to select there. So thank you very much, Dr. Siva. With the time, we will.
One more, like if you are to implement anything like Singapore or any other countries, go for PPP. As Professor Kumarage said, anyone can invest and take it. The risk is up to them. Yes. We should not take public money on that.
Yeah, it's like many options. Options are there. The selection of options is our task. That's why engineers and experts are here. So thank you very much. Those who are connected with the Zoom platform, they can put forward their questions in the chat box. Please do that, so that next round of questions we will take it up. And our next question is to Engineer Dhammika Jayasundara. He has been there in the railway, actually almost his career life is there in the railways for over 20 years. So with your understanding, with your experience, Engineer Dhammika, can you explain us, why this railway, according to our understanding, it has been noted as a captive user-based transport system in Sri Lanka, because no other options. People are traveling because of, maybe the ticketing price, and, sometimes as per, their affordability and these things, government is subsidizing those things. So what are the opportunities, to change this one, to attract more passengers, and what are the policy constraints that is having as at now, and what is the opportunities, and what should be the policy directions compared to integration of these transport systems?
I think if you consider the Colombo city area today, during peak time, railway is providing maximum service possible using existing rolling stock and the track capacities. But unfortunately for the railway, one thing is a department. That's a kind of advantage. Being a department, railway is funded by the government. Whatever the investment made for the railway or infrastructure and for the rolling stock is funded by the taxpayer. So railway is not accountable for whatever funding it gets from the treasury. So that's an advantage in the sense railway can be sustained. And other way around, being funded by government treasury mean they are not compelled to do innovations. They are not being compelled to serve the public in a profitable manner. So one thing what I see is the model today, the model rail is operated today need to be changed. For people who are managing railway should be held accountable for its performance and should be aware of the public need. That should be the way railway need to change if it's going to serve the people public need. And other thing is the being a department, government got its own agenda. The railway is positioned there to serve public at a concession rate for the especially for the not lower ranks of the economic rank of the society. So even though railway is in a way serving that purpose, in a current economic scenario, what I feel is it need to be made much more business-like and must be held accountable for its performance. That way, I think it will serve better.
I think we saw in the COVID time and the economic crisis time, a lot of people were using railways because there was no other option. Whereas people are expecting to have this during the economic crisis to use more and more bus transportation, but railway was there. But what is the reason for that? The bus was reduced, but the railway usage was increased there. Is there any...
One thing is economic factor. If you consider the price of the railway ticket, it's around 50% of the bus ticket. And also it's giving a lot of concession season tickets where I think public workers, they are only paying 15% of the travel fee. And if you even consider the private sector, they are paying only 40%.
Yeah, I understand.
One thing is the economic factor. Other things is the railway owns its own railway tracks. During the peak time, all the roads are getting congested. So in a way, railway, again, trains can move much faster than the congested roads. So those are the two reasons I think people coming for the railway.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll come to the some more questions. Very interested in talking about the railways the next time. So my next questions goes to Dr. Samudaya Narakara. You have worked in a lot of ICT in the transport sector. I have seen in your profile number of projects you have taken and volunteer projects like that, and overseas as well as in Sri Lanka. And you are working in that area and with a lot of experience in the engineering sector since your graduation. So we are talking about the digitization, digitization that has been a trend, and that has been a very useful tool for any of the development activities of any sector. So without ICT, we can't talk about anything in the engineering as of now. So what is happening around the world, and how that IT can be utilized for this transport development? We know that the discussion we had in the last year, there have a lot of ICT applications. The people were doing that, not by the railway, not by the National Transport Commission. They were also doing, but people, societies themselves, they have grouped and prepared some of these ICT inputs there and used it. So what is the best trend, and what should we do to support this transport sector to integrate this public transportation or whatever transport system we have to have?
Thank you very much, Dr. Tisi, for the question. And also thank you very much for the inviting me here, because as Professor Kumar mentioned previously, it is transport or any sector. This is no more just a single engineering discipline. Okay, especially like transport, it's like you have to using planners, digitalization area, mechanical engineering, electrical. Likewise, it's a vast area. We have to utilize all the area. Okay, coming to the your question.
Yeah, and I request to make it very shorter based on our time period. Yes.
I am forward. Okay, I'm not going through all the things like 19th century industry age and like railway and the fixed urban plan network there. It is 20th century like Ford invent like a cheaper car with the assembly line like things. It's a motor car usage become very popular, and they increase the conjunction and like traffic. So coming to the today, it's a digitalization area. So we all know most of them are like engineers and the professionals. So we can increase the resources and we can solve the problem. Okay, if we put a lot of money and we can increase the number of lanes or buses or something, so we can solve some kind of problem. But how we can utilize these currently available resources in the effective manner? Something like a simple example, like how we can utilize a GO road with the currently available lane and give more facilities to passengers. Not only the capacity increase, like safe and the convenient and flexible movement or mobility. So we have to go with the digitalization solution. As in the transport sector, actually in the money sector, in digitalization in Sri Lanka, we are far behind. But in the world trends, if you talk about like autonomous vehicles, self-driving vehicles are there now. Okay, so like computer vision and the AI-based dynamic traffic control, or maybe like IoT and other sensor-based buses, so you can track the what are the available sheets and other things, where is the bus available, and all those kind of things. And like IoT and other device or the sensor-based road tracking or parking tracking like things are there. Or maybe like AI-based dynamic timetabling, okay, based on the passenger demand and other things rather than the role-based. So it's a learning-based like AI and machine learning-based like dynamic timetabling like things. Or like a blockchain, like the peer-to-peer mechanism, like we can remove the like a service provider, like I'm not taking some kind of the name, like a service provider, like a taxi like things. It's like a peer-to-peer. People can run their own taxi or passenger transfer system rather than the giving a 20 or 25% for the commercial company. So these are the trends in the world. Okay, we have to go that level in the one day, but think about what we can do in the in Sri Lanka. I will take a simple analogy. Like think about like some year back, like 20 years back, if you want to access the banking, so you have to go to bank, or 25 years back. So it's a time bound, physical bound. So you can withdraw money and put in money into the account. But then the ATM machine is all around. So it's a time bound is removed, but the physical bound, you have to go to the physical that location and do the transaction for the ATM machine. Okay. But around 10 years back, most of the bank introduced a mobile app. Okay, so you can see it's like I'm taking a very simple example. It's not the 100% similar one, but you can, it's a simple mobile server and the app-like solution. Simply change in the banking sector, they can achieve enormous service to their customers. So today we are using mobile app, do all the payment, utility bill payment, credit card settlement, sending money, all those kind of things by using a mobile app. So that is the change can bring into the transport sector or any other sector by using modern digitalization. And I will take another lesson from our transport sector. Think about 20 years or 10, 15 years ago, how was the trivial or the taxi experience you have? So it's unfair, untrust, unsafe, and unsecure, unprofessional. So you don't know what the rate. So it's maybe end up with the argument and something like. So it's even nighttime. It's the female passenger. It's maybe doubtful to go with them, like a security issue, like a lot of things. It's like a think about your mindset. It's like people are thinking it's a single term. We are using a trivial car, yeah. And also we think about these people are engaged in all the unethical and the illegal activity. That the mindset we had about the trivial or the taxi drivers. Today, it's a little bit changed, like fair, trusted, safe, and we can track them, professional, traceable, and tidy. Different payment options are there, card-like things. Okay, how it happened? Do you implement any rules, regulation in the country? Did you give any big training or change the people? No, only one thing happened. It's bring by the private sector, thank for them. They're implementing a mobile app. Okay, that just a mobile app change the whole that sector perception and the quality of the service. So that is the power of the digitalization of the information. So we have to think about how we can utilize that one. So we have to do a lot of things, but as an inception or the initiation, my recommendation, at least for the public sector, we have to go with all the bus. So as an initiation, my recommendation is at least we have to go in the all the buses and the trains like a public transport. We have to track where it is very simply, like even we can do by using a mobile app with the available with the bus driver. So we don't have to invest much money for there. So at least the GPS like a tracking device is very cheaper now. Okay. So second, we need some kind of the, or if we want, we can implement like a payment option like card and other things, but it's optional. And we need some kind of middle management, some kind of the portal like bus management system or railway or integrated solution. And simply we can give a passenger app, people can use in that at least where the bus is available now. What is the next bus? If you want to go by the AC bus, you can simply take, okay, bus is coming in the 5 minute or 10 minute or something like that. So at least we have to start from there. So it will give us some kind of more information to the passenger and they can track it. But the most important thing is we may implement that one. There is no argument. We have information to make all the policies and decisions. So we have to collect all the data with that type of simple solution. We have all maybe 2 years or 5 years data. So simply predict, is it need a bigger new track or what is happening? All those kind of the thing. So at least we have to start from there. That's my answer for you.
Dr. Samuday, is there any applications, any practicing in Sri Lanka as at now with the IT for the transportation? Can you elaborate if you are aware of that?
Yeah, that normally in the private sector, we all know about the tax things, and the public sector, there's a couple of solution like central province using that University of Motto, like it's a iBus project. It's implement the bus tracking system. It's currently well operated there, but unfortunately, little bit of the support from the like availability of the tracking devices and other things, because it's not 100% happen. If you implement that way, simply people can track. If you want to plan as example, if I want to go from the in here to goal now, so can I decide what I have to do? I don't have any information, but simply that available infrastructure, so we can simply implement and do that way.
It's like you need to, have the network, all this integrated, transport system from taxi information system. You should be able to gain the public transport connectivity as well as railways, as well as, like door-to-door, connectivity and all these things. It is not happening at the moment. There are many parties having this separate, I think, independently. That's the main issue as at now, according to my understanding.
Yes, thing is, about the infrastructure and the facility in Sri Lanka, we have enough things like everybody have a mobile phone and internet connection. And secondly, luckily in the country, we have enough ICT policies and the governing and the directions are there in the like ICT sector, like 2003 and 2008 amendment the ICT policy, and like electronic transaction 2006 like things, and the ICT. So those are the legal acts, and the ICT policies promoting how we can use the things, and also interoperability and how to share the information with the other parties and give a more benefit to the customer.
Correct.
So we have to do that way and think how we can implement these things rather than inside the silos, coming out of the silos, how we can share the information and move forward. It's not the robot, like rocket science or something. It's a simple, currently available technology. I'm talking like a bank or other people are using.
Thank you. Very great explanations and very useful communication here. So my first and last questions goes to our panelists, Dr. Amila Jayasinghe, Vice President of Sri Lanka Society of Transport and Logistics. Amila, I think you have worked a lot of projects in Sri Lanka and overseas, and you are engaged with a lot of research and BRT and bus and rail transportation overseas, like that, according to your profile there. So, according to my understanding, the question I want to ask that what is this present land use supply set in Sri Lanka? It's basically governed by the UDA regulations and the local councils kind of things. So the present land use policy or setup, is it supporting about private transportation system? Is there any influence for this not being able to implement our the passenger transport system in the public transportation, how it works, like in Colombo, at least take an example.
Thank you, Dr. Tissa. So if I answer in very brief, so what is required is we should have integration between the transport as well as land use, or we call as a spatial planning, because there's always like a interrelation, with transport systems and land use. If you change the transport systems, so your accessibility is going to be changed. So according to land use going to be changed. So based on the land use, they create the different activities. So then we have to change the transport systems. So therefore always, so transport planners or engineers, as well as urban planners have to work together. It can be a national policy, it can be a regional plan, it can be a project. So otherwise we will have a incompatible with these two actions. Okay, that is the first or the one of the most thing, because in professor's presentation also mentioned there are different plans, suggest different things. So there are a mismatching with the population and the what's proposed in the transport systems. So if I bring an example, so National Physical Plan, okay, this is a policy level document for the entire country. What is proposed? You can see in the purple color, the proposed high dense corridors. So where they have taken the currently available infrastructure, the transport. So maximum utilization of current transportation system and other infrastructure. So that is what we have to do, because we have infrastructure. So at this moment we have economic crisis, we might not be able to invest heavily. So why not we densify both population as well as economic growth or employment along those corridors, harnessing that potential given by the transport sector. So therefore, as a land use planners or urban planners, what we have to promote is to densify. So not only we are having this transport, but while protecting the other environment sensitive areas. Okay, so this is not only like reducing the motorized traffic. So this is going to be very much sustainable approach. So like maximum utilization of available resource. If you go to the local scale, the Urban Development Authority, so they propose the local level rules and regulations to control land use and densities. In that case, also you can see what some of the plans relate to the Colombo area. So what they have considered the infrastructure availability, including the transport, as one of the key factor to decide what is the development. Okay, so when you are deciding the development, we have to identify what is the current supply from the transport side. So if you match, so if there is public transport and so on, so then we can sustain the densities. Okay, so therefore, so that matching is required. So that is one point I would like to highlight. Always the transport and infrastructure sector, transport and land use sector, we have to work hand on hand. So otherwise, there would be a conflicting. If you want to promote more non-motorized modes, means we have to densify along these transport facilities with the public transport, the bus and BRT systems. Yeah. Then other point I would like to highlight is this integration or alignment between the national policies, regional plans and local plans. As Professor mentions, so we have the Colombo different plans mention different population, different economic growth. But it should be in line the national level, because in the national level, if you are considering like a balanced development, consider the national goals and objectives, so how can come to the like very high growth to Colombo? Because the population living in the country is a fixed amount. Okay, so therefore, so whatever plans we are doing or project, so we have to in line with this national, regional level land use policies as well as special strategies. Otherwise, so we will propose, but actually it will not realize because there is a mismatch with this land use and the population and employment densities. Okay, so that's what I would like to give as answer for your questions. Thank you, Dr. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Amida. So thank you very much for maintaining the time. We are experts coming online. Our one of our SLST members, Dr. Jayalat Singh is there. So thank you very much, Dr. Jayalat, connecting with online now. And I'd like to start with a few questions from you, actually. I'll start with Dr. Tilak Siambalapitiya, because some different areas like Dr. Siambalapitiya, what is, we have seen recently that I have actually shared some of this information with you recently. In India, it is, almost 90% plus railways has been already electrified. And in Uttar Pradesh, it is in the maps shows it is 100% electrified in railways. So that is India, because India is having a lot of, electrical energy, excess energy, a lot of option with hydropower and, mixture of different resources they are having. So what is the, if you are going for the electrification of the railways and improving the railway transportation in Sri Lanka, we need power. So what should be the power sector policies actually that should be oriented in future for Sri Lanka to achieve this, what Professor Kumar and others are, talking about here?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think very long question. But basically, India's experience is investment in railways as a very high national priority. That's what they have been doing ever since independence. So they started off with the suburban system. So even by 1970, they had electrified suburban transport in Chennai. Of course, largely locally made carriages with low cost, a little bit of less safety. So, but India's drive for electrification has continued, and particularly since India is using railways for freight, I will not be surprised that they will reach even 100% of electrification, including long distance lines, largely for freight requirement. That is to make it economical, because it's very easy for you to understand that a diesel engine is only 25% efficient. So therefore, it's much better to put even the same diesel into a big electric power plant and burn that diesel at 50% efficiency and use that electricity to drive a train. So as you know very well, all our railway engines have a power generator on board. So they have a power generator on board and they take it right around the country. That's how they get electricity. All right. And the efficiency is not 55%, but it's much lower than that. So Indians realized it very early, and the central government as well as state governments very particularly invested on electrification. In addition, India's electricity is much cheaper than in Sri Lanka. So whatever you hear about renewable energy, India is more than 65% run on coal. So therefore, their electricity is much cheaper. And Sri Lankans, of course, in our desire to be the most environmental friendly country in the world, we don't have electricity. And much of our electricity is actually coming from diesel. So you may be happy or unhappy to hear that in our drive for renewable energy, we actually ended up with using more diesel than renewable energy. That's the real situation today. And you're actually paying for it. The recent electricity price increase is to get you to pay for that. All right. But then coming back to transportation, I certainly believe, based on all my analysis over the last so many years and working very closely with IESL on the Colombo Suburban Railway project. So this project was referred to here. So the present situation, as we all know, perhaps, is that all the designs are ready and the cost estimates are ready to have a electrified, efficient suburban transport system in the Western province. And the ends of that network is Kalutara South in the south. And on the east, it's Avissavella. And in the northeast, it's Polgahavela. And in the north, it's Nigambo. So the total project is cheaper than the published cost of the LRT for Colombo to Malambe. So the project cost is, of course, the project cost properly estimated will be less than that. So therefore, economics are very clear, and Sri Lanka has to set off on a path on which we already have approximately 500,000 passenger trips on the existing network. So there is very little marketing to be done. Passengers themselves will do the marketing. And if an efficient suburban railway network is run, inclusive of connectivity for the local short runs, the bus services to get to the station, as well as parking at the stations. So to my knowledge, all these have been worked out and are ready. And it's a matter of time and finding the investments and making the correct investments and looking for the correct people to lead these projects, hoping that we will have an electrified suburban transportation system. So that is my view on electric transport. Just a quick comment on IT use for transportation. Perhaps you know that railway passengers have got together and they have developed an app. So I can now find when my train is, and I will go to the station only when the train is nearby. So, and today I learned my train is 20 minutes late. So if I was in office, I will work for another 15 minutes and then go to the station. So passengers are doing what the authorities are unable to do. So, and with a little bit of support, I think railway department can make it official. Presently, it is unofficial, and there is very smart railway staff who appear themselves as passengers, and they update the app. But therefore, the information is official actually, but they can't do it officially, so they appear as passengers and they update the app. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very much practicing answer and practicing engineer. We know that it's very much important and encouraging for all of us to understand our present transport setup. And before forgetting the railways, with that discussion answer, I would like Mr. Pial to use in Sri Lanka railways to be in future. As Dr. Siambalapidi mentioned that, it was coal power in India, it's 65% of coal power. I saw, Doctor, actually in the last 2 months back in India, they were transporting coal, goods transportation in the railways with these electrified railway lines. It is a very high frequency, like one by one we were able to see that. So practically I saw that. I had some experience there. And our goods transportation, actually, we have not considered anything in the railways now. Most of the people, that's some of the controversy came in this, some of the KV line and all these things. So what are the policies to, take care of this, both goods transportation and the passenger transportation balance in Sri Lanka? Because it was earlier goods transportation we planned with the railways in the colonial time. Now it has become the only passenger transport mode. So are we going to, achieve some benefit, having some goods transportation with that? And how is the policies towards that?
Yes. Yes, thank you very much for the question. My opinion is this, in case of the railway, railway has not improved from the colonial time. That may be from the 1950s, 60s up to now. There is only a very marginal improvement because it's actually yet it cannot become a user-friendly service. Right, the modern technology has not come in. Now, if you go to see now, when as Dr. Tilak Simravedi point out, the passenger information system is not yet ready. Although some private, although passengers have got app going, but railway itself has not put a passenger information system. That is the most important thing for a person to come to the railway. They must know what time the train is coming and so forth. Then when you come to the station, still you will see that there's a big queue for the old ticket machines are still being operated. Not the machines, but actually it's a manual system where the station master takes it out, then punches into some sort of a gadget and then gives it to. Now, we have not improved from that. Why? The reason is we are a highly regulated body. We have a railway ordinance, RTX ordinance, which has come in somewhere around 1860s with a little bit of modifications, but other than that, nothing has happened. So initially, what I feel is those things have to be improved. Now, again, when you could see railway still has the season tickets. Now, with that season ticket, even the train travelers, the government employees had to pay only 11% of the actual fare. Private employees have to pay only 30% of the actual fare. Right. So today, the variable cost for a train kilometer, if I'm not mistaken, is about 1,700 rupees a kilometer. So which means in each train, around 1,000 passengers have to go in each train with the present fare structure. Well, does that happen? I think only the Samudra Devi and must be taking about close upon 1,800 to 2,000 passengers. All of the trains on the coastline takes only about 500 to 600, maximum about 700 passengers. So therefore, there's no, there's no way you can earn a profit. Even in Samudra Devi, most of the people who are traveling are either public people who are in government service at 11% of the normal fare, or in private sector at 35% of the normal fare. So there's no way that you can earn any profit. That is number one. Then the next thing is, I find, for a railway to improve, there has to be a network. All our lines are really going out. There's a line going to Ningampu, line going to Polgahavala, Anuradhapura, Maho, but nothing is getting connected.
Orbital network, yes.
There's no
Yes.
network connection. So that is one thing. I mean, the government has not looked into it, and that is very important. The other thing is, all these years, government has been trying to give minimum amount for the railway for it to go on. Like in case of the infrastructure, I mean, it is being used until the speed restrictions are put for either bad weak rails or weak sleepers. Right. At the moment, also there are speed restrictions on the coastline where train travels at about 15 kilometers per hour because of corroded rails. So if you are running a proper system, I mean, before the rails get corroded, the rails must be imported and rails must be given, so that people have no difficulty. People are comfortable. They know what the time the train is coming. It's not late and so forth. But that's not happening. So these things will have to be sort of looked into more carefully, and we have to see if the proper system is going to be maintained, the infrastructure is put into place, and they are dependable. Then with regard to the question of freight transport,
Yes.
now in case of India, there are long haul transport where, you straightaway transport for about 1,000 kilometers.
Yes.
And there's a definitely a profit, and there's no so, and also most of this transport is from end to end. That is, if you from one industry to the other industry, and those industries also have a railway line into their premises and so forth. Now in Sri Lanka, what happens is we have very short haul, but nevertheless, I mean, if the freight is outsourced, I mean, railway has to only run the freight. I mean, you can give the whatever, either the containers or whatever household goods or whatever it is. For a person who is gets outsourced, we bring it to the station head and ship it in the train. That kind of a way. I mean, railway only does the transport of it. So the rest of the thing is looked after by a person who outsources that. If with that kind of a procedure, I think railway can actually go for freight transport also. The other issue is that there's no in the past there has been time that about 60% of the oil has been transported by rail. Only thing is now the that has to be followed very carefully because the emptied by wagons will have to come back.
Yeah, yes, yes.
For again to read, but that is
Yeah.
not happening properly. So those are small issues
Yeah.
which can be rectified by the railway itself.
Yeah, thank you very much,
Thank you.
Mr. Pyar, for giving us a good insight of that. Dr. Jailath is online. Dr. Jailath, if you can make it very quicker. And I would like to ask, now present setup of transport system in public transport is not very much favorable for school transportation. So this is a big, the unsafe transport modes in Sri Lanka, as we understand. Parents are not sending them to schools in the public transport system. The reason is that the danger, and they understand. So can you quickly make a comment on that? What is your specific reformations required for developing integrated transport setup in Sri Lanka? You can unmute your mic and speak, Dr. Jailath.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can clearly hear you.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Very
Thank
nice to
you,
see you.
Dr. Tissa, for the opportunity. I listened to all the presentations. I'm so thrilled to listen to all those presentations, wondering whether I'm in Sri Lanka or some other country. Well, one of the problems in our country, whether it is school transport or public transport or private transport, is because of the politically driven and politically motivated people making decisions, and some of the professionals even supporting these politically motivated short-term benefit decisions are motivated. So that is one of the reasons. And we did a lot of studies about public transport and especially a school transport system in Sri Lanka, mainly based on Kandy, but in some other cities also. School transport also not properly controlled, not properly monitored, not properly coordinated by any authority. Because of that, even the school transport system itself is a problem for the society and for school children, because they take children for more than 7-8 schools. So school vans has to stop at all schools to drop their children halfway. So that school vans itself is a problem, and the public had to move to school transport because of not having public transport system properly. They're not reliable, not safe, and they cannot send only children in schools. And because of that, probably you may know, there's a serious problem for the professionals also. Sometimes professionals has to go in their official vehicle to pick their children from school ends. That's one side of the story. The other side of the story is many school vans stop at various offices and they drop their children at offices. So most of the parents, especially mothers, even fathers, have to pay more attention to their children after 2 o'clock rather than doing their job properly. Therefore, school transport should be a must, proper system, and it is far behind compared to the economically developed countries. So we have to think about it. But to tell you very honestly, I also don't know from where to start, because the whole thing has messed up. So I want to pose this question to the panelists. When we talk about new things like IoT and ITS and then MRT, BRT, etc., what are we going to do to this existing corrupted system? So that's my question to you. Thank you, Dr. Thiss. I don't know whether I answered your question. Anyway, thank you again for the opportunity given.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jailath, for being very quick with the time availability. So thank you very much for that, your participation. So there are some questions coming from audience, the Zoom link. So I'd like to forward that to Professor Kumarge. There's a question. It's not a question. It's like some comments on that. I wonder, IESL is not in favor of LRTs anymore. It seems this is disgrace to the country that is not justifiable at all compared with the other developing country in Asia. So how can you comment on that? It's just a comment. Mr. Jayasundara, W. Jayasundara, has I think it's not clear to you. Shall I repeat it again? Okay. I wonder, Sri Lanka is not in favor of LRTs anymore. It seems this is disgrace to the country that is not justifiable at all compared with other developing countries in Asia. What it means, what I understand is that government is not anymore, interested in LRT. It's something like he also say that my understanding that LRT should be here, and compared with the other developed country, we have to go with the train, something like that.
Please comment on that.
So this is unfortunately the thinking that has got us into this difficulty. We are not saying LRT is not desirable. Any technology, there is the right price, the right place, and the right time for it. What has been proposed now, I don't see has any of those right. In fact, in my presentations, I said, yes, rapid transit is required at the right time, at the right place, in the right place. So I think people like to make these sweeping statements that, so-and-so doesn't like, or the country doesn't want. All these countries that have developed, like it is said in Asia, have done those decisions right. That's how they have come there. Not by just haphazardly saying, build LRT here, build expressways there, which is like what we like to do. We still want to build more and more expressways when we can't even maintain what we have built. We should be charging like 4,000 or 5,000 rupees for going to Gaul if we have to maintain those expressways, and who will pay that? And the LRT would have been something like that. So I think, obviously, must be a member of the IESL. I think we need to be much more intelligent in reaching conclusions of what is good, rather than seeing things in black and white and not willing to change.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor. I should ask if there's another questions coming from Zoom link, Zoom platform. I would like to ask this question from Professor Asoka Perera. It's related to IT. What electronic IT infrastructure did you have identified so far that electronic and IT engineers can develop targeting BRT? Engineer Mohan from Nerd Center. Shall I repeat it again? Yeah. What electronic and IT infrastructure did you have identified so far for the electronic and IT engineers can develop targeting BRT? It's maybe some misunderstanding or some not clear of the question. What my understanding is that they're asking what IT engineers and engineers can do in Sri Lanka, electronic and IT engineers can do for targeting the BRT development in Sri Lanka.
I think let's take as more of public transport in that respect, what IT and electronic engineers can do. Yes, lot can be done. We have to remember ICT and electronics, all these things are tools. So the right use of tools will definitely benefit, as Dr. Samudyanayakara. And I would say more important is, like Professor Kumarage touched, policy is on top. If you do not have the right policy, right, arrangements, then even with extremely good tools like ICT or electronics, can't deliver good public transport. So I would like to say in that way, there's a lot IT engineers, electronic engineers, we need if you are going for modernization and these sort of areas. Yeah. Over to you, Doc.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anything that Dr. Siva wants to elaborate with that?
Yeah, I think if I understood the question correctly, I think BRT has a whole integrated system. So as many of us has discussed, tracking of the buses. We need to inform the users before planning, during en route. All these information should be available. So there are a lot of communications, and there are a whole lot of big data analysis is available, because we need to track all the buses, all the trains, so put it into the single platform and integrate in a manner that informations are value-added informations are available. So there are a lot of different engineers' role here. And then managing the infrastructure itself, BRT infrastructure itself, managing the fleets itself. It's another different role the engineers should play. And then overall integration. And then this the financial ticketing management, the fare collection system. Usually people say it's outsourced to another private partnership. So there's private entities take a whole role of collecting the money and redistributing back rather than the single organization like what we are doing, experiencing now. So this Bogota, like South America has experience. Infrastructure is owned by government and the regulation is owned by put by government, but the operation is given to a private party and the money collection of fare is given to another private party. So this is how they have done. So there are a lot of frameworks available we need to try out. And there are a whole lot of engineers role is here. We all need to work together, and the local capacity we need to develop, and we all engineers should work rather than just signing as a consultant here.
Yeah, thank you. We have a few minutes more as for the warning from organizers. My next question, actually, I would like to ask from Professor Jagat Munasinghe regarding this. In Colombo, there are many overhead structures are proposed, like elevated highways, elevated railways, and kind of things which we don't realize and understand and see in many of these developed countries, whereas this LRT is running at great, and even in Melbourne and congested city like Sydney in Australia, there are many underpasses and metro stations like that, but most of the time elevated things are not very much popular there. So my question is that how it is affecting, we can get the answer for this from the railway side as well, and how it affect to the urban architect for a city like Colombo. Is it advisable to have that clean city like Colombo?
Right. Okay. Thank you. At least finally we come to the kind of the beauty and the kind of livability, right? So all these things that we do, all this infrastructure, all this transportation and everything that we talk about finally ends up, that is the kind of most important thing that everybody's kind of interested in at the end, the livability and the beauty and the aesthetics, right? So that must be the question that I think you are directing to me. Of course, Colombo has been, I mean, we all know Colombo has been, had been, of course, known as the garden city of Asia. It was praised by many people. I believe even Singapore has taken this as an example some time back, a place that is beautiful to live in. Even Patrick Geddes himself had an imagination of making this is a garden city of Asia because of the beauty and the kind of small kind of township that is available at that was available at that time, right? So where is that beauty now? Right? So all this is everything that we talk about. Okay, we could have been the garden city of Asia and the most attractive place in South Asia, right? That could have been the situation which we lost. And what is happening in Colombo and what has been happening over the number of years in Colombo is a result of, I mean, it's a manifestation of the policy. I mean, we can see the same thing that is happening in the policy level, kind of disintegration and despair and all kind of the chaotic thing that is happening at the policy level is manifested in the ground level as well. So I'm sure in another 10 to 20 years time, the Colombo that we get, that we will have, that we will experience will not be a garden city anymore. It will not be a kind of beautiful place and attractive place anymore. Even though the UDA has a vision to make it a kind of waterfront city of South Asia in future in its present day plan. So it's very likely with the type of development that's going on. So all these things, not only in transportation, but also in the construction sector, power sector, and everywhere, you can see that much of disintegration. So that you can see we have different agencies working in silos. They work individually. In transportation sector, we know how the RDA, I'm sure there are some RDA engineers here, but has any of these projects that is designed by RDA has got prior kind of consideration with this urban development plans that is prepared by the UDA? And of course, I know UDA has some kind of some level of consultation is done with this RDA and all the other agencies. When they make plans, they take into account all that. But to what extent the other agencies, like for example, Water Supply and Drainage Board, Electricity Board, and the RDA, consult the UDO, at least look at these plans, right? I'm not saying they're 100% good and kind of correct and kind of most appropriate plans, but at least have consultation for kind of mutual cooperation and kind of for the improvement of that, right? So that disintegration at that level, at the policy level and institutional level, is reflected in the ground level as of now, right? So if we go like that,
let's not talk about aesthetics. Let's not talk about this beauty and the kind of livability and all that. We will end up in another so-called international city. So we call everywhere in the world, you find these international cities all look alike. When you are in Colombo, you don't know whether it's Hong Kong or Singapore or wherever, because they look alike, right? So we'll end up in a situation like that unless we will be sensitive to these aesthetics and the uniqueness of the place. Colombo has its own uniquenesses. Of course, the other places also have. Other cities in Sri Lanka have unique characteristics.
Urban heritage.
We
Yes.
can, I mean, heritage is part of it, of course, right? So we call this genius loci, but is the uniqueness of the place, right?
Yeah.
So unless we are sensitive that all these I mean, I put this blame not only for urban planners, but partly to the transport engineers as well, not to the planners, not to transport planners, but transport engineers also are highly responsible for that, because they are one of the culprits, of course, right? I'm sorry to say this, right? They were the culprits, those who introduced all these highways, elevated kind of structures, and widening of roads without understanding the kind of scale of the human being, right? So we know that all these things have been introduced by these engineers, and planners also are kind of responsible. I'm not saying not them, but also as the politicians and those who follow politicians, of course, everybody is responsible. But remember, we have not talked about one important aspect. Of course, our friend is here. I believe the cycling and walking, right? So which is the most important one. You may remember Mr. Munzamanda, of course, some time back. Then when they developed this the transportation policy, national policy, I mean, they all were talking about vehicles and the highways and expressways. But in this country, as I know, according to the law also, right, there is a kind of a hierarchy. First is the pedestrian, second is the cyclist, third maybe the kind of vehicle. Is that the, am I right? That's not the case, is it? No, that is how it's happening now, right? But what I'm saying is, according to the policy, yeah, right. Yeah, but anyway, pedestrian is at the top, right? So the walking. So I have not seen anything in this transport policy. Pedestrian is not there, right? There was no space for the pedestrian. There was no space for the cyclist, right? But enough space for these vehicles and the roads and all these things. All this is fine, right? Totally completely forgotten, right? So all these aesthetics and everything that we talk about is dealing with the pedestrian, the walking and the cycling, and those are the kind of more important things for a livable and beautiful city, right? To experience it. What happened to them? And even today we have not discussed enough about it. That's why I concluded with that. Okay, let's take that, also give enough attention to that part as well, because we all know more than 80% of the people, those who use towns in Sri Lanka, are pedestrians, right? So let give enough space for those people as well, those who use the pedestrians as well.
Thank you very much,
cyclists
Professor.
as well.
Actually, there was more concern from the cycling and the walking, and this is how we have to integrate transportation. I'm not going to comment on that based on the time constraint, but I am very much thankful, and I would like to make a few questions from the audience. I think we have Cycle Association. They can comment on some of the questions to the panelist. And what are the questions and answer? Please make it very short, because we are running out of time. So we have to conclude it within very short period. So please, can you give that?
Can I?
Okay. Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Come.
Professor Jagat addressed the initial question where the provision for the micromobility, that's for cyclists and pedestrians, and so on. And I agree the integration should be there. But my key concern here is listening to Professor Kumarage and the others as well. 2009 plan. Okay, Professor Kumarage said the plan on 2009, it is comprehensive, that I agree to a certain extent, but I disagree that it doesn't, that whether it serves the purpose of today's, especially based on the areas like integration of ICT and micromobility likewise, because I couldn't see much of a reference in 2009 policy to those things. And the other question is, we spoke of the topic of the agenda is on to deviate from project-based transportation to policy-based transportation. But very little on policy here. What I heard was on plans and projects. So plans wasn't there in the initial thing, but there's a clear difference between the plans and the policy as well. So policy means where are the goals? If the intellectuals cannot set up the goals, the final objectives, then the coming in governments won't be able to change the objectives. So then what I believe is it is the intellectuals, especially from the University of Morocco, only need to take charge in setting up the goals, clear goals, mandate, that is the which is the policy. Professor Kumarage's plan also 2009, more than the policy, I see the plans and projects as well. But with all what we had, that is somewhat all right, but I disagree. It is with the comment that it is updated. Thank you.
I think Professor can.
Yeah, so quickly, let me respond to the last question. That is about the policy. I did mention that the 2009 did have deficiencies, particularly in terms of IT and in terms of climate change. So those have to be included because those entered, as any policy needs to be revised from time to time based on so many changes that happen. So current plan that is before the cabinet, I don't know if it has gone to the cabinet now. Okay, so includes greater attention in both those areas. As for the policy, not presenting policy, I can take half an hour here and list out all the goals and the objectives. But what we need to is what is the key leverage that we need to have. And that key leverage is getting the right mix of transport supply. And that is getting the right mix of private to versus public transport. Everything else, like we talked, that reduces fuel use, that improves emissions, that improves urban development and beautification. So we need to think of what is that one thing that we need to do to make this happen. And this is what we have missed all this while. So all of those things are there in the policy. If you read, even in the 2009, all those objectives, economic, environmental are there. And what you see are the drivers to achieve those. So right now I am picking on the most important driver that can change. So that has been my approach. And that I think is the policy implementation is where we have failed, not in drafting policy. So I think that's where we need to begin. And even the new policy, we have put there a monitoring mechanism and implementation mechanism, I think. But again, we remain to see government itself has to monitor now. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor. We are talking about the policy directives in future. So please focus on that more and make it your questions very shorter.
So in most Sri Lankan cities,
please mention your name, please.
Yeah, my name is Divante Kanayaka.
Thank you.
In most Sri Lankan cities, we have minimum parking policies, parking regulations. So do you think we should get rid of them as we move towards public transportation policies? And also do you think it is required for us to have a proper public transportation system first and then get rid of the minimum parking requirements, or should we do that simultaneously?
I think both Dr. Siva and Dr. Samudek can answer that.
I think your approach of thinking is very correct. Thanks for that question. When we push on the public transport promotion and public transport development and so on, definitely we need to support any policy on public transport alone. Nothing will work silos, definitely. So when we push on the public transport, definitely we need to pull from other sides also. Like say, for example, Colombo, when we are promoting public transport, when we are improving the public transport, definitely we need to put on the parking restriction. Like when we are trying to disincentivize the private vehicle, one way of disincentivize is road user charges. So one of the road user charges. Second most important is restricting the parking. So this is two most important restriction we need to work together. Definitely, I agree with you. I think so.
Yeah, I can give one more question only, please. Any more questions come from ladies? Sorry. Okay, you can.
My name is Vermi. I travel from Atulkote to Goralla every day in the weekdays, and maybe about 5 to 6 color lights I have passed. I have to pass. My question is: these color lights are being designed, having considered all this traffic volume, maybe the considering the traffic volume, how to control the roads, giving the access to the main road. But most of the time, what I see is when is the traffic jam location, all the color lights are being disengaged and the policemen are operating on their own. So I might just a simple question whether all these done studies, a person can control it much more efficiency than all these studies which we have spent a huge sum and put on these color lights.
I think both Professor Kumar again, Mr. Bandara, you were behind you. He was director planning, former director planning of RDA. You can actually elaborate with that after professors.
I mean, this is why we mentioned that we now have to go to the advanced technology where, you know, videography and so on can be used to do these things automatically. I recently wrote to the Director General of the RDA because traffic signals have not been updated after COVID and economic crisis and fuel crisis. There are a lot of them with excess time, you know, and he told me that for these 3 or 4 months, they have rearranged the timing in 22 signals in 4 months, and they have about 100 signals. So by the time you do all of that, it will take about 3 years. By the time, you know, traffic changes again, right? So I think, you know, obviously agencies have lost the grip on these things. Police may be actually doing a better job than the signal timing that is there. That is so something's wrong somewhere. So that's why we need to, in a way, leapfrog the technology and get some of these things, and you know, those things can be used to our advantage very quickly.
Thank you. I think Mr. Bandar also can make a short comment on that.
Actually, I can remember about 2012 or 13, we did a study and prepared some designs also. Advanced traffic management system for Colombo. All the junctions are coordinated and linked with the signal system with the control system in the central control system. But that was not implemented. Even that was taken as a MCC, one of the MCC project. But that also not implemented anyway. Because that is one of the, I think now ID can do it very much early, cheaper, and even without any even foreign involvement.
Okay, thank you very much. So we are running out of time. So our last set of, it's not a question. I'd like to make a short, very short, 1 minute or 2 minutes wrap up comment on conclusions, starting from Alda and Professor Kumar. I would like to have it at last. So I start from Dr. Amila, please. Make it very short, is very appreciated.
Yes, so thank you. I think we have discussed many things. In summary, I would like to say, so as a transport engineers, we always think about efficiency, how to improve the efficiency of transport systems. So while we are thinking efficiency, I think we have to go beyond the efficiency. We have to think about livability of transport systems, because these are places for human, not for the vehicles. Even traffic signals, not only the like improving this the cycle time. So to whom we give the priorities? Because if you see the Japan, usually the intersections, they are allowing the like, pedestrian to move freely in the traffic signal time and give more priority. In Sri Lanka, so they give only 10 seconds or 20 seconds. Sometime in between the road, we will stuck because our thinking is efficiency in terms of vehicles. Okay, so in our policies plans, I think we have to go beyond that. So look at if you want to have livable cities, so we have to make places because these are places for humans. So that's what I would like to highlight. So as a professional, we have to get together engineers, planners, architects, and IT experts and make places for people. So which will create a livable place for we all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Amila. Mr. Amika.
I think if we consider, I think last few decades, our government has spent for so many projects which are not really well connected to serve the transport purposes, but they have resulted in isolated projects. We got highway expressways. Some say it's the utilization is about 20%. And we got certain railway lines built at many billions, 30, 40 billions at cost, but only 1 or 2 trains are running per day and people are not using those trains. And sometimes the electricity bill of one station is much more than the income of daily train running. I think due to all those short-sighted decisions and very expensive white elephant projects, we have come into a juncture the countries at a default today. So that can be also opportunity. The government can learn from the defects of the current situation, and I think the government should go for decision making at the policy level and providing conducive environment for private sector. It's driven by the demand to take the control of providing services, and that way I think we can expect a much better future and much more efficient future. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Dhammika. Dr. Samuday, please.
I would like to give 2 comments or 2 remarkable things. One thing is we have to give more funding or more priority for the ICT things for the public transport system usage area. The second thing is not only it should be going under the single institution like a silo model, it should be open and integrated model. Even like a new startup private company come and use that data and giving another solution like things, it should be there. It should be open data model.
Thank you, Dr. Samuday. Dr. Sivakumar.
Let's start from the very first definition of transport. Transport is of moving people from one place to other, or moving goods from one place to other. So it's talk about people or goods, not about vehicle. So the most priority has been given to the people movement. Forget about the vehicular movement. So we have to give start from there. As Professor Manasinghe said, start from the people, non-motorized transport, then the high occupancy vehicle, then only the rest of the modes of transport. This is the hierarchy we should think. And to achieve this one, always we look at the supply management and the demand management and the land use management. So this 3-directional approach is very important. Integrated approach is very important. So as a whole, today our agenda is on public transport. It's a higher occupancy vehicle. So as a concluding note, identify as an engineers and as a professionals and as a citizens, identify the correct mode of public transport for the time now and what cost. That's an urgency for us.
Thank you, Dr. Siva. I'd like Professor Kumaragi to make the final concluding remarks on this.
Sitting here in the Institution of Engineers for a joint program between SLSTL and IESL, I think it's time that the engineers took over or got more involved in shaping the transportation future of Sri Lanka, together with the related professions. Not leave it to road building as has been the current practice. As has been mentioned, different disciplines of engineering plus IT, software development, land use planning, all of these have become integrated today. And we need to accept that and work together. And that's the only way forward. And together with the vast experience we have of all the many mistakes we have made, I think that should be enough motivation for us not to make those mistakes again.
Thank you very much, all of you, the panel member, Professor Kumaraki, the keynote speaker today, and all the panel members, Dr. Sivakumar and Dr. Samudaya, Engineer Dhammika, and Dr. Amila Jayasinghe for coming here and giving us a very good insight of transportation. So with that, I think we have talked about policies, and we should take this put forward to make it to the government and to make them aware and the public awareness. A lot of the developed countries has achieved their transportation developments through the media campaigns as per our studies that we have learned, and our regional countries. So actually we have to make the people aware, and the myth that people are having regarding the public transportation, we have to correct it in future through the policy level information that we have to put forward, and taking some more spaces in the medias like that. So we need a lot of power, a lot of energy, and a lot of support from engineers and Institute of Engineers and from Civil Engineering Sectional Committee. So that's a way forward, I feel, from this today's discussion. So it went a little more time than expected. Sorry for that, for being keeping you for about 20 minutes more. And it was very interesting subject. That's why we were spending this much of time. With that remark, I think we are come to the end of this today's program. So I would like to hand over the podium to Dr. Ganga Samarasekaras. She's the Vice President of Sri Lanka Society of Transportation, and she's the head department of Sri Javadara, the Civil Engineering Department in Sri Javadara University. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I think the demand for mobility, which we all have to satisfy. So I think a lot of professionals, I think most of us are professionals or planning to be professionals. So got together and discussed how we can cater a better demand. Maybe like Professor Jagat said, how we can move from international cities without a higher identity to move towards a livable city. And I think that requires a lot of integration in detail as well as at individual level, leaving from silos and coming together. So in that context, I think both SLSTL and IESL got together to organize this session, moving away from project-driven policy, project-driven to policy-based public transport development for Sri Lanka. So we'll continue this discussion and try to go towards a more policy-based transport development with the participation of everyone. So before I move forward, I think we had a very lively discussion, so which was activated by a very eminent panel of resource persons. So I think we should thank them. So we have arranged a small token of appreciation for our resource persons. So I would like to invite Engineer Kamala Gunawardena, the chairperson of Civil Engineering Sectional Committee, to hand over these tokens of appreciation. So I would like to start with our key resource person, Professor Amal Kumarage. So please come onto the stage. I think you have given a very detailed description. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And then I would like to start with Dr. T. Sivakumar for his sharing his experience on BRT and Engineer Dhammika Jayasundara for sharing his experience on railway sector. And Dr. Amila Jayasinghe to share his for sharing his experience on planning And finally, Dr. Tissalianage as the moderator of this session. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I missed you, sorry. Dr. Samudaya for sharing his experience on IT sector. His yeah, and then finally Dr. Tissalianage. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I think, thank you, Engineer Kamala Gunawardena and all the resource persons. Maybe we'll give another round of applause for all of them. So I know we are running late, but let me take a few minutes to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of the organizing committee, because this important event we have been planning for a long time, but I think finally we were able to materialize that one. So on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has supported directly and indirectly for making this seminar a reality. And this seminar was co-organized by IESL Civil Engineering Sectional Committee as well as the STSL. So at the outset, I would like to thank our key resource person, Professor Kumarage, for sharing his long-term data and the details, as well as putting things into perspective for how we can move towards more policy-driven transport planning. And also, I would like to thank our resource persons, Dr. T. Sivakumar, Mr. Engineer Dhammika Jayasundara, Dr. Samudaya Nanayakara, Dr. Amila Jayasinghe for sharing their experience with the audience. I think we have had several discussions to come to this place, so all these insights will be useful. And before I move forward, I would like to thank all the experts by mainly personally being here and sharing this their experience with the panelists, especially Dr. Tilak Siambalapitia, Engineer Priyal De Silva, Professor Asoka Pereira, and also Dr. Jayalata Edrisinghe joining via Zoom, as well as Professor Jagat Munasinghe for joining us today to share their experience. And also, I would like to thank all the participants who have actively participated here with questions and some ideas, both by physical mode and also via Zoom. And also, on behalf of the organizing committee, let me thank the president of IESL, Dr. Kamal Laksiri, who had personally taken this initiative, and he had encouraged us a lot in many ways. So should thank him, and also President-elect Professor Ranjit Disanayake for personally being here. And I think there were some other council members as well. So since the council was going on, some of them had to leave, but I should thank all the council of IESL for that. And also our co-organizing done by Civil Engineering Sectional Committee, starting from Engineer Kamala Gunawardena. I think she had actively motivated all of us and also coordinated both parties and also personally being here today and helping us with all the arrangements. Thank you. And also Engineer Banduka as the project coordinator has helped us. And again, I should like to thank all the members of the Civil Engineering Sectional Committee. And in addition, I would like to thank IESL for the technical support and also publication department for their help, and everyone in IESL for helping us with the organization. And the other part is SLSTL, our own organization. So I should thank Dr. Tisalianage, our president, for taking this initiative very actively so that we could materialize this event as an organizer as well as the key moderator for today's session. And I should also thank all the council members of SLSTL for joining today's event and also encouraging us. And in addition, there are two silent sponsors for this event. They didn't want their name to be mentioned, so I should thank them. With these warm words and very fruitful thoughts that we have got from the session. This session, I would like to tell that this session has ended, and thank you everyone for joining today. And before you leave, please join us for dinner. There's a fellowship event taking place at the memberships lounge. And also we would like to invite you all to take a photograph. Thank you very much.
Before the photograph, give me 1 second. Actually, we all got better thankful message, but there's no one to thank Engineer Ganga. So Dr. Ganga, I want to thank you. Thanks a lot.